based on the closure of borders and the grounding of flights. As an immediate response, the government provided $240 million as part of its assistance program to redistribute the excess produce from farmers. My ministry has also partnered with several organizations, including purveyors and distributors, as well as processors, to redistribute the supply. One such partner, for instance, is Tradewind Citrus, which has developed a new product utilizing excess tomatoes and pineapples. And I think ginger is in it as well, creating a puree that will eventually be targeted at the schools through a modern school feeding program that we are developing. And we really commend them for that initiative and enterprise, because right now, most of our purees for fruit juices are actually imported into the country. That we're gonna have to turn around.
Yeah, Rupert.
We've also been arranging mobile farmers markets to sell the excess produce and have coordinated the distribution of the produce to quarantine communities for farmers who wish to donate as well their excess supply. In fact, given the developing quarantine situation in some sections of St. Mary, we have also responded to the needs of the parish with assistance for the Anoto Bay higglers through the buyback program to the tune of some $650,000. The fact is, in every crisis, we must always remember there's a seed of opportunity. And my ministry is helping our farmers and producers to recognize and to seize these opportunities. We're also working to assist farmers through the $192 million drought adaptation and mitigation program being implemented by RADA. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has magnified the need to place agriculture on a sustainable path. I think we can all agree that with the global projections regarding the increasing impacts of climate change and impending diseases, elements such as COVID-19 may become more frequent. We don't want that to happen, and we pray that it does not. But even as we must prepare, always be ready. We therefore need to craft a path towards ensuring food security. It cannot be business as usual in Jamaica. It was in this thinking that led us to craft the Production Incentive Program. Under this program, which is also implemented by RADA, we are focusing on specific crops with a view to increase and sustain agricultural production to meet market demand. The buyback program that I spoke to earlier is also being partly funded through the Production Incentive Program, with assistance being given to egg, pig, fresh produce, and food farmers. Some time ago, we also established the National Agribusiness Strategy, a plan aimed at growing Jamaica's agricultural sector through modernization and diversification. The agribusiness strategy will focus on introducing modern-day best practices in the sector to improve the skill set of workers, reduce operational costs, and revamp the whole agricultural environment for businesses to operate. And importantly, to ensure that we step up the value chain with an aggressive agro-industry sector. We must create a new paradigm within agriculture in Jamaica if we are to improve output, capacity, and overall earnings within the sector. I want to say to you, as I close my presentation, that in every crisis, there's always opportunity. And there are no shortage of opportunities in Jamaica and in the world today. There are markets that abound for agricultural produce, fresh and processed. If you think in Jamaica's case, we have CARICOM, a 15-member community where we enter duty-free. We have the diaspora, mainly in the United States, in Canada, and in England. They are crying out for Jamaican produce, fresh and processed, can't get it. You have third country markets that are looking for exotic things that we have the capacity to produce. They can't get it either, but there are examples such as the Walker's Wood line of products that have taken off excellently in the third country markets. Then we have added to this list of opportunities the plan to develop a modern, homegrown school feeding program, where we feed our children with much more nutritious food, and that are grown in Jamaica. And while we create wealth in the brains of our children, we are at the same time simultaneously creating wealth in the pockets of our small farmers. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my opening presentation. And I just want to say to you that I want to commend the private sector in Jamaica, where the large businesses are demonstrating a willingness now to get into the business. We have, for instance, Michael Leachin, who is a Jamaican, head of the National Commercial Bank. They are now doing 3,000 acres of Irish potatoes, and they intend to go into orchard crops and other produce on that 3,000 acres. When that's finished, he wants several thousand acres more. And they want to work in a mother farm relationship with small farmers to share with them technology and to make the small farmers know that when they produce the things, there's a guaranteed take up at a reasonable price. And then we have the Bernard Lodge project that is coming up. And we have a major program where we are substituting sugarcane with other products for sugarcane, which has been the staple item for Jamaica over the years. And I want to, as I said, to commend the private sector, because not only do they want to help us to grow, importantly, they want to help us to process. Companies like Grace Kennedy that are in Hounslow in St. Elizabeth, they have just set up a new processing plant in Denby. We have the old national meets, now Lidford Logistics with Richard Lake and Lisa Hanna over in St. Anne, working on taking things off from the small farmers, processing them, storing them, and when the hotels reopen, servicing the hotels as well as supplying to the CARICOM market. And so I have other people like Jam Processors in Manchester. Jam Processors exports at least 6 containers of yellow yams right now into the United States and Canada. They export sweet potatoes, pumpkins, and now they're setting up a modern processing facility. And in addition, you have other companies that are primarily focused on imports, like Rainforest and CPJ. They too want to get into the business of local production. So that's where it has to go. That's where we have to revive the whole agricultural sector by the vertical integration into agro-processing. And we cannot, in all of this, we have the capacity, we have to put together the infrastructure of more drip irrigation systems, not just for the large lands and large farmers, but for small farmers as well. And we are starting right now with a pilot project where we are going to get 2,000 drip irrigation kits from our local company, Isratech.
Oh, sorry, all right, everybody hear me now?
Go ahead. Yes.
All right, so thank you, Minister Shaw, for such concise presentation. We're gonna move on now to Mr. Lenward Fulton from the Jamaica Agricultural Society. Mr. Fulton? Mr. Fulton?
Maybe he has.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
You're hearing me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good. Let me thank Minister for such a good statement. He has given a comprehensive overview. My role is to talk about agricultural institutions and so on. This was the need has arisen for agricultural institution, the one that I lead for 125 years now, when Dr. Henry Blake thought that there needs to be a company or an organization put farmers together. Incidentally, the first subgroup of the Jamaica Agricultural Society was a group you call the Roots and Tuber Group. Out of that, we developed many bodies, the cocoa board, statutory bodies, the banana board, and all the boards that have done significantly to develop agriculture in Jamaica. Somehow along the way, they were dismantled, out of which grow bureaucracies like JACRA, bureaucracies like fishing CEO, fishing executive agencies, and so on, that have their role to play. But we have thrown out the baby with the bathwater in destroying these various commodity boards, and have developed various groups that have their purposes, but are not very well focused on any of our crop. The PMOs, a good group to reach farmers, but they are not specific. And so today, all these commodity boards that have been dismantled, they are part of the Jamaica Agricultural Society now as growers organization. But they are struggling to stay alive because the cess that they used to get when they were commodity board and the income that they used to get when they were commodity board have been taken away to develop other structures. The institution like what I lead, and rather, and many other, the 4-H Club, form a nexus between farmers, government, marketers, researchers, investors, and so they are very important to have them. But I do not think that there is a structure sufficiently well put together in this country to hold them together. All of us seemingly now pulling in different directions in a bid to survive. The Jamaica Agricultural Society, the 4-H Club, for example, are on government books to be taken off and left on our own by 2021. And so therefore, if we are interested in holding farmers together, in keeping farmers in various groupings, whether the groupings is cocoa, coffee, banana, then our institution need greater support to do so. We also give a balance between government, investors, and others, input suppliers, to hold the interests of our farmers as paramount, as each one of those entities would have their own objective, whether to have maximum sales, whether to have high interest rate going to them, or whether to exploit them for the goods they produce. And so for agricultural institutions serve many roles in Jamaica and around the world. Some of the strongest agricultural groups are cooperatives in Israel, in England, in Canada, in the US, that holds farmers' interests together and ensure that the farmer is not torn apart, scattered for exploitation. So my position is that the agricultural institution is the pivot, that axis that rotates the farmer and rotates them to, in many instances, as they interface with good people, harsh people, selfish people, we are here to strike a balance and to see to their well-being. Thank you.
Fulton,
Yes.
ladies, our room is now full to capacity. So I'm gonna ask anybody who's in the waiting to watch the program on the on Facebook, GIS, the PBC, PBCJ. Most other Facebook would have it because we are full to capacity. All right, so we're gonna move to our next presenter, Dr. KTML. Dr. Emil will be looking at the managing the risk to the food supply chain. Dr. Emil?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll try to get this thing directly to focus on the current problem, the COVID problem, and so on. There is obviously a direct correlation between disposable income and the capacity of the population to buy food. As the economy wound down and disposable income disappeared, there was accordingly a backup of food. And this backup of food was felt particularly by the farmers who had grown it in anticipation of it being disposed of, but ran into problems because so many things were out of sync, or so many things were changing as a result of this problem that we have. In the Gleaner today, a fellow talked about not being able to mark his eggs and in fact was dumping eggs, but he refers specifically to supermarkets. Now the market has changed, and let me give you an example of how it's changed. First of all, individuals will come to you to buy, and that's a particular way of doing things. Then the higgler will come to you to buy to supply markets. And then we have a new innovation now, the vans that will go and supply various communities because the communities are not able to move about because of this problem. And in addition to that, now we have the supermarkets that this gentleman was referring to. But within the supermarkets, even the way food gets to the communities is now changing. They now have to deliver. They now have a call in and a drive-through service to pick up, or get in a line and they will pack and deliver to your motor car. All systems that literally didn't exist last month. Now, to get to the main aspect of marketing, such as what happens with my company Caribbean Broilers, we are working on a mother farm concept. The minister touched on it, where we realize that farmers are amateurs with respect to marketing. Marketing is a profession that requires a training and understanding as to how to do it. So that we are collecting farmers who are obviously know how to grow, collecting their produce into central systems. The minister mentioned Grace, who is doing the same thing, where we will grade them, process them further, package them, market them, and deliver to the various entities which the minister mentioned, not the least of which, of course, was the hotel industry and so on. But the world doesn't end at the beach. I have to tell you that since morning, we have landed 24,000 dozen eggs in Port of Spain, and the eggs we are eating for breakfast tomorrow in Trinidad will have come from the Jamaica and the Caribbean broilers. But there's a wider world which we have to market, clearly beyond the capacity of farmers to deal with. And therefore, we have to consider upgrading the value chain, which the minister refers to. The value chain has several ladders in it, and the farmers is just one rung of a ladder that has maybe 10 other major elements. First of all, they have to pick the right thing to market. Don't grow anything that's not marketable. And don't grow it because my father grew it. Grow it because the changes in the marketplace now require it, and you will respond to it. And there's a lot of misaligning between what is being grown and what the market requires. The farmer doesn't have the capacity on his own to determine this. The research and development facilities which we need to have, and Mr. Minister, we're guilty of spending far too little of our budget on research and development, and we need to come back to this to find the right products to grow at the right time. Then beyond that, we need the multiplier units, which will propagate it in one form or another from seedlings or slips. And then we need to be able to get these to the farmers with the technical support as to how to grow them. And this is where expansion of RADA and the technical cadre that's going to be performance of the extension officers will come about. And it's only then we're beginning to get to Mr. Fulton's farmers. So without all that grouping before, then we're not going to be successful. And incidentally, we cannot leave out the technical supply services. We have to have the chemicals, the fertilizers, the proper seeds and so on here. And much of this comes from abroad. So again, we have to learn to get things in sync. And but some of the major problems that we have now are quality problems. The people won't eat any and everything. We have to make sure that we have quality produce. Then we have to have the capacity to transport them. And I don't mean the back of a pickup or a crocus bag on the back of a motorcycle. I mean proper transport systems built to transport agricultural produce. And now beyond that, we need to be able to store them. The gentleman who dumped eggs in the last 2 days probably didn't understand that eggs can be stored for 6 weeks to 12 weeks if the proper storage systems were in place. And these are absent, and the farmers need to understand this better. And of course, then we need the matter of getting them to the processing plants. An example, Mr. Fulton, is that you know that 40% of the acquis picked are lost before they get to the processing plant to be processed into acquis that we can export. So there are all these problems facing us that we have to deal with. And one of the main problems is the farmer needs to understand pricing and the use of money. I note that this selling things for below the cost of production is because a farmer doesn't understand that he himself and his family have to be given a salary for what they have contributed to producing the problem. So the selling price he arrives at is minus his time and energy and that of his family and his friends. And hence, he sells below the cost of production. If you waste money in that way, then you're not going to be able to replenish your stuff and to be sustained in what you're doing. But I'll stop there for the time being, Mr. Maitland. We can come back to it a little later.
All right, sir. Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much, Dr. Emil. Thank you very much, Dr. Emil.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Next presenter will be Miss Olive Donna Walsh. She's the Deputy CEO of H&L. She looks at the input of appropriate farm supplies and other resources. Mrs. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Honorable Minister Shaw, other panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all good afternoon. The relevance of Jamaica's food security and safety has long been acknowledged as an absolute necessity and an importance to nation building. Agriculture therefore continues to be an integral pillar of the economy with significant contribution to employment, food security, revenue generation, development of farm families with other linkages. In fact, regardless of the numerous debates in the past and possibly ongoing over whether or not our agricultural sector is sustainable and operating on economies of scale, our food import bill continues to hover in the $1 billion region. And with that, the importance of the sector cannot therefore be overemphasized. It speaks to opportunities for further strengthening of the sector. This experience we are having now regarding the pandemic undoubtedly has resulted in us being uncharted waters, but with a strategy that balances interest of our producers and our consumers, we have the opportunity to reshape a sustainable future for agriculture. And therefore, we'd like to share with you that from the perspective at Hardware and Lumber, and that of my fellow colleagues in trade, we can confirm that our inventory status on appropriate farm supplies required for continuity of production represent adequate inventory to satisfy our regular market demand for the next 3 months in most cases. And these inputs include seeds, tools, equipment, pesticides, fertilizers, and other materials. There is also an assurance from our local-based and our international suppliers that arrangements are in place to guarantee continued supply for the foreseeable future. In fact, they have increased their operational processes to ensure any unusual demand are also met. As distributors, we are therefore remaining committed in service to the nation for further development of this industry. And with COVID-19, it presents an opportunity for a reaffirmation of the importance of the need for us to reset the policy framework, the quality of execution on those policies to secure the value chain for farmers, and to recommit to a wide, fulsome stakeholder engagement. Some of the key aspects that require further focus and collaboration, and I list only 2 primary areas for now. One being the establishment of suitable and a sustainable path for the sector. And with that, we need to be looking at areas such as investment opportunities for efficient and more convenient access to fresh produce and value-added products. I can't help but note that our Honorable Minister elaborated on the value-added opportunities that we have as a nation. For the sustainable path, we need to also collaborate on the subject of land utilization. Minister and everyone, it requires a review of the zoning and the adherence to the lands that are most suitable for efficiency, including mechanization and irrigation. And we dare say that we need to see a deliberate effort in more professionals gaining access to some of these suitable agricultural lands to enhance production. We need to upgrade our irrigation infrastructure and access by all for farming, access to water. And we are therefore very pleased with the announcements that Honorable Minister has shared with us on the initiatives around the drought adaptation and focus on irrigation for small farmers. The second area of focus and collaboration that I would like to emphasize is the need for government and private sector strengthened collaboration regarding policy review so that we can facilitate more efficient movement of agricultural products and the inputs to the sector. There are numerous areas that need some further review, such as the diverse sources from which we need to access more climate smart inputs, including seeds. We need to review and consider a deliberate approach towards the removal of GCT and duty from agricultural inputs so that we can have them more attractively priced and accessible by every category of farmer. Under that, we also need to look at the access to special production and or low interest funding, special production and or low interest funding incentives so that our farmers can access with confidence and convenience funding to reduce the stress of having adequate inputs being put into farming to realize the optimum experience. So we could go on with a list, but at this point, Mr. Moderator, I just want to state that for us in the distributive trade, we embrace the government's recent campaign, as with all other campaigns, the Say Yes to Fresh campaign, the support of our farmers, and we commend all stakeholders that have been involved in allowing for the experience of redistribution of farm produce to have been a successful one. We remain committed as input suppliers and are therefore aligned with world-renowned manufacturers to allow our Jamaican farmers to gain access to premium quality inputs and technical support consistently for further enhancement of Jamaica's production, productivity, and attainment of our food and nutrition security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Donna.
You're welcome.
Very concise presentation to the point. Now we're gonna move next to the next presenter, Dr. Omar Thomas. He looks at the distribution and marketing of farm produce. Dr. Thomas?
Minister, I see he has left already. Other members of the panel, viewers and participants in this forum, I bring you greetings. At the outset, let me commend our over 220,000 small farmers who cause us to have access to our fruits, our vegetables, our root and tuber crops, the aromatic and medicinal crops, our animal protein, all for our daily sustenance. COVID-19 has exposed the weaknesses in our agricultural infrastructure. Structural changes with respect to the distribution and marketing of local farm produce has now been brought to the front burner. The Ministry of Agriculture, however, since COVID-19, has responded quickly to forestall a fallout in the sector as it relates to the abundance of fresh produce, with impending massive in-field spoilage occasioned by the non-existent demand in the tourist industry. We cannot talk about food security if a transport and distribution system for locally produced food is not structured. Fixing this is the lowest of the proverbial low-hanging fruits. It is a known fact that while farmers were dumping produce in the major production parishes, consumers in many of our population centers throughout Jamaica were starved of the said produce. The restructuring of the sector should address this malaise and therefore give birth to an organized movement of produce from the farm gate to the end users throughout the island, with, of course, 2 shunts. Shunt number 1 was the export sector. Shunt number 2 is agro-processing. A serious gap in the value chain was highlighted by the crisis of the perceived oversupply of food occasioned by COVID-19. Steps, therefore, should be taken to deal with this type of pathology once and for all. The Ministry of Agriculture responded quickly, as we said, to distribute the excess produce that was held by the farmers. And Minister said they contributed over $200 million to assist the process. But this intervention, although it is a noble intervention, it is not sustainable. And therefore, it allows us the great opportunity to fix the distribution system once and for all. The ball must not be dropped at this time. The value chain management as a part of the agricultural production and marketing apparatus is a critical component of our food security aspirations. What is the plan going forward? What should we be looking at? We want to develop greater value-added activities. Of course, RADA has about 7 incubators around the parish, around the country, in some of these parishes that deal with the semi-processing of produce from the farms in these parishes. We have the JAS has its factory at Morgan's Pass that could be used as a second level tier for agro-processing from the incubators. And of course, we have the private agro-processors. And we have on our panel Novel Quest, which is one of the most prominent agro-processors in this country. And I hope he will be bringing something to tell us this afternoon. The other plan going forward is to develop a reliable and a dependable trans-Jamaica distribution chain, recognizing and organizing the purveyors who are presently in the system. So we need to expand that within the context of our Agricultural Produce Act. The new structure that we need to look at that COVID-19 has afforded us is for us to embrace the principle of an agroeconomic zone. And this agroeconomic zone would bring some order to the way we produce and the way we distribute our agricultural produce in this country. Because in this agroeconomic zone, we are contemplating post-harvest facilities located at reachable strategic locations where farmers produce their products so that they can be sorted, graded, packaged, stored, and sent to the various segments of the market. The fit-for-purpose transportation equipment to deliver the produce to the end users is at best rudimentary. So we need to establish a protocol to embrace the type of system which now exists at a better level of organization so that the produce can be conveyed in a manner that ensures and assures the quantitative requirements of the consumers. Several of these agroeconomic zones with associated relationship with the 7 food processing incubators managed by RADA could be the short-term activity towards a permanent value chain shunt with mutual exclusivity. And we're saying that the purveyors within the context of the Agricultural Produce Act can play a very critical role in the way we distribute and market our agricultural produce. But first of all, all their activities must be grounded in firm policy. We have an agricultural Investment Corporation. And the law that governs the setup of the Agricultural Investment Corporation asks that a number of things should be done. But we recognize that the operation of this institution is only focused on less than 10% of what the mandate is in the law. So we need to bring focus to how they operate so that we can address once and for all the distribution and the marketing of our agricultural produce. I pause for now and wait for the others before we start to elaborate on some of the points I have made. I thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, I'm just gonna remind people that after the next 2-3 presenters, we'll be taking questions from the audience. All right, so the next presenter will be the president of JAMPRO, Miss Diane Edwards. She looks at the business and investment opportunities despite COVID. Mrs. Edwards? Not hearing.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One has to get accustomed to these Zoom meetings and the muting and unmuting. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. A really good conversation going on. And Minister, good evening to you as well. Very distinguished panel here of agricultural experts. So this is not at all my claim. Representing JAMPRO, we are much more focused on the end product of the whole issue, which is more about markets. I'm going to throw out a couple of figures because I think I want to make the first point that we have enough markets for our products. It's not that we're lacking markets. We have about 41% of Jamaica is arable land, according to the World Bank, but only 11% is under cultivation. So I have to say that that's a huge gap that you can see immediately that we are not producing what we could be producing. If you just look at a couple of figures that we have researched, the market for yam in the US is about 80 million, Canada 27 million, UK 11 million. We can give you a raft of other crops and information on them. Between RADA, MICAF, and JAMPRO, we have a lot of information on how to grow products, where to market them, and we, JAMPRO, put you in touch actually with importers. We have chosen to focus on certain retail operations because I think we really need to start to go to the end consumer and not so much through middlemen where we lose a lot of the margin. So we are working with one major supermarket in the US, which has 95 stores, and that's a really good size for us to be working on. They have come to Jamaica 6 times, and they have told us basically what they want is mango, papaya, avocado, pineapple. So, I mean, it's clear where the opportunities lie. We're not investing in fruit orchards. We're not investing enough in vegetable production, although the markets are there. So we can show and we can actually direct you to importers. So on one of our missions overseas, which was to a trade show called CIAL in Canada, we got 30 requests for information, which we have all converted. And this goes from beverages to coffee to canned products to fresh products. So the market is there. It's not really a problem of the market. It's a problem of the supply side. And how do we increase production? How do we manage the proper supply chains? And I think Omar Thomas, a lot of what he was talking about was that supply side and how do we deliver product to market. But it's also in the side chats that online we have been discussing. It's also about how do we prolong the shelf life through storage, prolong the transport and make the transport much more formalized. That is critical to getting product to market in the right shape and in the right quality and at the right time. And I think it's also, there's a huge need for training our farmers. Our farmers are still in many ways antiquated and not business-like enough. We really have to change the mindset of our farmers if we want to take agriculture into the modern world. Just to show you again a couple of figures about the market where we have worked, Jamaica is still importing $900 million US of food. If you look just at the Caribbean region imports 85% of the food that is consumed not only by locals, but by tourists. So again, the markets are there. If you look at Jamaican black castor oil, which JAMPRO has been integrally involved in, the US market is approximately 174 million. Of that, 28 million is Jamaican black castor oil. How much of that market do we supply? 4 million. Because where does the rest of the 24 million come from? India, masquerading as Jamaican black castor oil. So all of these things, I'm just using all of these figures to show that there are huge opportunities for fresh produce, for processed food, for vacuum-packed fresh produce. So for instance, vacuum-packed roast breadfruit, well, it's not fresh anymore, it's roasted. For ready meals, for different ways to consume the products that our diaspora love and remember how to consume, and that their children are losing the habit of consuming. So we have a real opportunity to expand investment in agriculture. We have challenges. One of the people on the chat asked, well, why are we not producing more, and why have we not expanded our orchard crop production? And a lot of it is to do with financing. We have got to change the picture for financing in the Jamaican agricultural sector, because the finance is only available to the very big operations like the JP's, Grace's, Caribbean broilers, etc., who have large successful farms already. How do we bring the smaller farmers into it? I think that the mother farm that Dr. Amiel spoke about is absolutely the way to go, not just for chicken rearing, but for a variety of crops. JAMPRO actually has done a 5-year strategy, an agribusiness strategy, that is really looking at climate smart agricultural solutions. And some of those solutions mean that we have to use renewable energy to reduce the cost of energy to the farmer who needs to dig wells, who needs to be transporting water through irrigation systems. We need to be looking at how do we restructure our agriculture to make it more performance oriented and more market driven. We looked in that study, we have looked at a plan to develop modern storage and distribution to, as I said, expand the mother farm concept and expand the value chain approach to agriculture. So we really believe that agriculture has to become a business. That's the only way that we can really begin to see the potential take off of agribusiness in Jamaica. We think agribusiness is a good business. We are in a situation where we have markets that we are not supplying, and those markets are both internal in Jamaica from the consumers, internal in terms of the hotels, regional in terms of both hotels and local people in the Caribbean, and then the wider export market. We have huge opportunities and we're just not taking advantage of them. So I just want to leave you with the fact that the opportunities are there, the markets are there, and the land is there. We just need to put all these things together and become a real performance-based agricultural country. Thank you. Thank you for listening and look forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Edwards. And let me just remind the viewers, remind everybody that Jamaica is open for business. All right, so our next presenter will be Colonel Jamie Ogilvie. Mr. Ogilvie is the Assistant Vice President in charge of the High Pro Division of the Jamaica Broilers Group. Colonel? Hello?
All right, good, thanks. I'm
Oh.
unmuted.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Moderator, for, first of all, organizing this forum, and thanks for having me, and to all the other presenters who have presented so far. And the discussions going on in the chat group are very good, some very good points. I think it's important to establish some truisms up front. First of all, this town hall discussion we're having here today is relevant to everyone, whether you're a micro, small, medium, or large farmer, livestock or crop, or fisherman. This discussion is important for all of us because the entire sector has been impacted by COVID-19. And COVID-19 has brought home some very stark realities to us as a nation, foremost of which is our food security. Agriculture is business, all right? And we've heard that from a number of the presentations so far. The mere fact that we import $1 billion worth of agricultural products shows that there's money in agriculture. Historically, Jamaica has shown that when agriculture thrives, GDP grows. And when it dives, whether it's because of natural disasters or other, or GDP contracts. And so agriculture has to be treated as a business. If we fail to plan, then we can plan to fail. And central to agriculture being treated as a business are our farmers, particularly the small farmers who are such an important part of the backbone and the productive capacity of our nation. And so I want to talk very briefly about building capacity in our farmers. Our farmers know how to produce. They've been doing it for years. Yes, there are areas where we can boost productivity and efficiency. But one of the big things that is exposed when we have situations like this is our need to improve our planning in agriculture. I don't care how small you are, you have to have a plan. It's not simply about deciding to plant a crop and you grow it properly and then you reap and you find a market. No, it requires a lot more than that. And planning involves risk reduction and mitigation strategies. You have to get ahead of the likely factors that can impede your production and your productivity. And so we have to train our farmers and help them to understand. And I'm very happy to hear you talk about the resources that you have in JAMPRO to help with planning. And I see the comments in the chat about access to such resources. But our farmers have to understand, even more than the technicality of production, is about our markets, about production processes, diversification, synergies, and integration within the sector. Diana McClarkin in the chat group spoke about bees. Bees are so important to our productivity. And without bees, we can kiss agriculture goodbye. These are very important things that we have to understand, and our farmers need to understand the synergies and the integration opportunities that are critical. We have seen in this COVID crisis, the importance of understanding our customers and managing our customers' relationships. Critical. Business intelligence is so important as a farmer to decide what you're going to produce, when you're going to produce it, how you're going to get it to market, understanding what the challenges could be. It is so important, almost as important as research and development. I'm not going to talk too much about R&D because that is a topic that has been ventilated quite a bit. Supply chain and logistics. How do we get the produce to market? Contingency planning. These are areas that our farmers need to understand and be exposed to. Jamaica Broiler Sweets Hyper brand has spent a lot of resources in providing the enabling tools to help our farmers understand planning. We have agronomists, animal nutritionists, veterinarians who go out in the field at no cost to farmers to help them understand how to plan and how to be productive and take advantage of best practices. This is very important to our sustainability, which Dr. Emil spoke about. When we're talking about technology in building capacity, the buzzword now is about climate smart agriculture, and there are different aspects to that, whether it is protecting the environment or boosting productivity. We talk about drought resistant and disease resistant genetic material, renewable energy, conservation, use of sensors and GPS technology, precision technology for farming, vertical farming, These are very important aspects that we need to take advantage of, but all of these assist and boost primary production. Where we need to go, and it has come up in some presentations, and it's happening in the chat right now, is how do we move from primary production into processing and value-added activities? That is where we're going to make the quantum leap in boosting our food security and ensuring that we can become far more competitive as a sector. But I think perhaps one of the areas that we really need to spend a lot of time, whether it's a public education or providing forums to disseminate this, is what I want to call our environmental aspect. Not the physical environment. We've kind of addressed that when we talk about climate smart agriculture and the physical environment. But responding to changes in our environments, whether they are financial environments, social environments, legal and regulatory. Olive made a very good intervention about the political and policy environment. These are enabling environments that, one, the farmers have to understand the impact on them and their decision making, and we have to do a lot more where that is concerned. There are so many electronic resources and digital platforms right now that people can tap into to stay abreast of these very important environments. But if we don't do it, then we're going to be stuck, as I've seen so many people put in the chat, in the 1970s and the 1980s. We have to, as we come out of COVID, we have to sort of retool and rethink our approach to how we position the agricultural sector. We must be predictive and proactive rather than reactive. And essential in all of this, we talk about say yes to fresh and support local. That is at one level, but there also has to be the policy framework and the regulatory environment that allows our small farmers to grow and produce. Jamaica didn't become 100% self-sufficient in poultry and table eggs overnight. It's because of a policy decision that over many years allowed us to get to this point. And the same thing has to apply for all the other subsectors within agriculture. So let us support local, yes, but let us also provide the environment to build capacity and allow room for growth. So Chairman, I'll leave it there for now, and I'll be happy to come back and discuss in the question and answer section. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel. Well said. All right, our next presenter is Mr. Novel Quest. He's an entrepreneur, agriculturalist, and he will be looking at the sustainable pathway. Mr. Quest?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Patrick, am I on?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Patrick has put me in a rather difficult position because after having heard from such a distinguished panel, perhaps I have no option but to simply pack up my stuff up, because enough has been said. And what we have seen here is that despite this crisis that Jamaica and the world is now experiencing, that we have more than the capacity, we have more than the capabilities to address this situation, to turn it around, and as a matter of fact, to do some of the things that we should have done many years ago. And so what I'm going to do at this time, because it would not be practical to go back to all that these distinguished speakers have said. So many things have been said that it might not add to the discussion to simply say, the minister said this, the colonel said this, and so on. Instead, what I would like to do is to present an action plan. And this action plan is actually coming out of all that the different speakers have said. And so it is guided and will represent a summary of what the different speakers have said. And so to move right into it, when you're in a crisis, it is important that you do what is necessary to get out of the crisis. Also, in a crisis, there are certain characteristics which will have to be addressed. For instance, there will be a lack of resources. And certainly, we are not in a situation where things are, as we would say, things are bright, because already we are hearing about reductions in government expenditure. We are hearing about cutting budget. Government, it is said that in some quarters that government has lost economic activity to the tune of $120 million has been lost. And so it is important to now get back on track. And so in looking across the various sectors of the economy, the sectors that have the capacity and the characteristics to respond quickly, to recover quickly, and to utilize a minimum of resources, agriculture and food production undoubtedly comes to mind, because there's all that infrastructure in place already. On the plains of St. Catherine and Clarendon, there are billions of dollars of infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure, which could be used to ramp up back production and to offset some of the losses that we have had. And so without financing, none of this can be achieved. And I've already said, and I think it is accepted, that government will not be able to put as much money as we would want to into the whole recovery process. And so some innovative way of raising funds quickly will have to be investigated. And Patrick, perhaps you are well positioned to assist with this. From long time, the whole matter of a diaspora bond has been touted. Perhaps it's now the time for us to appeal to the persons in the diaspora to actually come forward, to actually support a bond. And perhaps Diane is also well positioned to advise on this, Diane and Jampro, well positioned to advise as to how we could raise money to boost production and to get the agricultural sector back on track. And both the Colonel and Dr. Keith, they raised the issue of access to financing. Now, if money is being raised, we are not saying that it must be given away, but farmers must be able to access money without having to prove that you don't need it, which is how banks lend money traditionally. Commercial banks only lend you money when you can prove that you really don't need it, because their goal is not developmental. Their goal is really to make a profit. So we speak about financing. We have financing in place then. Assume we are successful. Then we need to start doing those things, which will now increase production quickly. And the agro-processing sector comes readily to mind. In Jamaica, there are at least 50 agro-processing factories, such as the one that Mr. Fulton has in Morgan's Path. Now, these factories operate most time at about 30 to 40% of their capacity. Now, it is quite plausible that with a program to ramp up production in these facilities, you could look in at an additional US $250 million in exports over a 1-year period. It is possible. And what this would mean, it would facilitate the production of certain crops to enhance production. Let us take pineapples, for instance. There's a major importation of pineapple slices, pineapple puree, and other pineapple products happen in Jamaica. But based on improvements, based on the use of the improved variety, the MD2 pineapple, we are finding where farmers are able to reap upward of 50,000 pounds of pineapple per acre. And so if we notice what is happening, the price of pineapples is actually coming down to the point where one could put in a pineapple processing plant and could really make some money, both on the local market and on the export market. And so that brings me to mind that coming out of this crisis, and as a response to it, that we should have what I call an export Marshall Plan. And this is not new because there's a national export policy. And so the export of fresh produce alone, and as I said, I'm really just summarizing what all the other presenters have said, except that I'm presenting a business perspective to it. But we could easily, by additional exports of yam, and Diane made mention of the yam market in the United States being in excess of $120 million. Now, that is within the existing distribution channels. If other distribution channels are used, such as that supermarket chain that she has mentioned, because most of the distribution now occurs through the corner shops. If we were to go into the supermarket where most of our people are shopping, then that could easily be doubled. And based on past experience, based on exposure to the yam business, we know that the yam market in the UK, and not just the yam market, the market for yam, dashins, and other such tubers could be quadrupled. Also in Canada, the market for pawpaw, the market for mangoes, so many other crops. So we really should use this crisis as an opportunity not just to recover, but to ramp up our production of these crops. I'll mention too quickly domestic crop production, and I need not go back through the very brilliant marketing initiative which has been put in place now to the farmers market and so on. But again, we see that the problem has not been a problem of a glut. It's a problem of distribution. It's a problem where the food chain, distortion within the food chain. And if these issues are addressed, which could be done as part of this solution, it would mean increased production for farmers. And I must mention, though, that I'm quite impressed with what Olive has presented regarding the commitment of the input suppliers. What is impressive is that these input suppliers are not only supplying high quality inputs, they are also supplying technical assistance. And what I happen to know is that these suppliers, they have a worldwide networks, worldwide access. And so they're able to move technology, move information from environments which are comparable to ours to bring about quick and effective solutions. Hence the reason why we are getting cabbage, or production of cabbage has been increased. So has been the problem. On the question of agri-import substitution, which presenters have mentioned, in light of the $1 billion import bill, there are many opportunities for import substitution, which as a country, we should grab with both hands. And this would contribute significantly to the recovery strategy, the recovery initiatives where COVID-19 is concerned. The development of trans-regional corporations. Let us take the coconut industry right now. And I hope Chris Gentles is on, because Chris and his board, they would like 10,000 acres of land to establish in coconuts. But given the intense competition for land in Jamaica right now, they're not going to get that 10,000 acres. And so perhaps one option that Chris has is to go to Guyana. And I hope Dr. Santiago is listening in. Go to Guyana, we're still within the region. So we have to be looking outward now to see how we can integrate, how we can collaborate with entities outside of Jamaica to enhance the whole issue of addressing the post-COVID era. Then again, the local marketing distribution dynamic that we have seen is also very important and has been mentioned by several of the presenters. The matter of land is so critical, and especially against the background of such competition for land. I find it mind-boggling that one entity has 3,000 acres of land and is seeking to get another 7,000 acres of land to get into agriculture. The question is, where are we going to get so much land? And so it is important that government ensures that the arable agricultural land that we have, the land on which, and it's not just the land, but as I mentioned earlier, billions of dollars of infrastructure has been put in those lands. Irrigation systems cost money. These were built long ago. And when you convert agricultural land to other uses, you're actually losing that valuable investment in infrastructure and the opportunity to continuously provide food for the nation and to improve on food security. Now, I want to mention other areas, such as the development of the livestock sector, of which our colleague panelists are certainly eminently qualified. I am nowhere near qualified to mention the livestock sector. The livestock sector must be looked at. We need to look also on the question of food loss and food waste, because it is, the FAO estimates that at least 1/3 of the world's food is lost or wasted. A significant amount of food loss and waste occurs in Jamaica. And so this needs to be addressed, because what it means that farmers are producing food, and due to imperfections in the value chain, such as lack of storage, lack of transportation, lack of logistics, there are issues and quite a bit of food is lost. And on the question of food loss, it is estimated that pre-deal larceny accounts for over $5 billion in losses. If we were able to reduce pre-deal larceny by even 5%, then certainly it would mean a significant amount of money in the farmer's pockets. And so that represents a summary of what the presenters have put forward. I have chosen, as I said, to summarize it in the form of a plan, a business plan, and a way that we could move forward, an action plan that would allow us to do what is necessary at this time to turn this situation, not to sit down and fret and worry about what has happened, but to bring about the transformation of agriculture that we have long wanted to see. Thank you very much, Mr. Maitland. Thank you, presenters. Thank you, everyone.
Right, Mr. Quest, thank you very much for such a detailed presentation and a real genuine summary of what was said. All right. So we're gonna move now to the open session for questions. I'm just gonna ask that the question be very short, to the point, no long speeches, because we are running out of our time now. We have what, another half an hour to go? So I see where Miss Megan Scott has a question. Mr. Host, can you unmute Megan? Or before we go to that, any of the presenters want to make any comment before we take the general questions? Minister? Edwards? All right, so we have a question from Megan Scott.
Good evening, Mr. Maitland. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Honorable Minister, esteemed panelists and audience. Wishing you from the start a COVID safe passage. My questions are as follows. One, a large percentage of the diaspora groups, diasporians who would normally send home remittances, have been impacted negatively by COVID-19. So whilst the bond is a good idea, I believe there needs to be other opportunities for collaboration. There are agreements where diasporians can collaborate with government nonprofits and farmers to bring money and capacity into Jamaica as well as brain, while making a profit for themselves and for the country, so benefiting host and home countries. So I believe the plan of action should include that. Another thing we need to look at quickly, I won't take too long, is the fact that even some of the produce that gets into the countries, such as Canada, takes a long time on the shelf instead of moving to the shopping cart. You'll see yams and so on, discolored and so on. We do not invest in-store promotion, which is serious. People have to rely on potluck lunches and festivals and so on for mainstream. We cannot just sell to diasporians, you know, we have to sell to mainstream customers who earn the bigger sums of monies, and that means in-store promotion and taste testing and so on. We also have people who don't understand the product. So many times I have to stand by the cashier to explain yam is a capital intensive thing. They have to buy yam stick, put on a truck and so on. So there's no way yellow yam, and mind you, it hits the pocket, but yellow yam sells at the same price or cheaper than sweet potato. Does that make sense? So we have to educate the population. And since many people have to speak, right now I'm with a group. We are looking to collaborate with government. I would love for people in the chat, nonprofits, governments, farmers, and so on, who would like to collaborate so we can have the numbers and mass to develop some market systems development projects to help us all, and so on. I think, and the whole climate finance opportunities that we are missing out on, we need to bring in the expertise from the diaspora as well as in country, as well as what exists in the host countries, and to collaborate, because there's time now for us to submit unsolicited proposal, but we need to know who is in Jamaica to collaborate with. Thanks much.
Thank you very much. Good comment. All right, I see where Miss Donna wants to ask a question. Miss Donna? Miss Olive Donna?
Unmute me. Okay.
All right.
That's a question, Mr. Maitland, just a general comment. I've been following some of the discussions in the chat group, and there is a commonality, a number of commonalities, and we hear the things being presented this afternoon. A key concern for us as a nation, we're not short on persons with the knowledge. We're not short on concepts and proposals of how to move the industry forward. You only need to go to a few of the expos and see the creativity of rural farm families and others in the value-added production they put out, samples nonetheless, for the most part. The bottom line is that as a country, we know what we need to do, and COVID has forced some realities on us. Where do we go from here? There's no need to reinvent the wheel, but we need to make some tough decisions. When we talk about getting persons into agriculture and doing it with efficiency, of course we need to expand as a country. I wear two hats in hardware and lumber, construction and agriculture. They're both important to the economy. But we must, Honorable Minister, we need to ensure that our lands that are most suitable for efficient operation are preserved and utilized accordingly, and increase our building infrastructure on the appropriate land zoning context. We just need to get going, Mr. Moderator. We have the answers, but we need to get into the planning and execution mode in a comprehensive way as a nation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Donna. Miss Jamel, Miss Francis, you have a question? You have a... Miss Francis? Mr. Trying to unmute. Trying to unmute Miss Francis. Yeah. You have a question, Miss Francis?
No, there's a question from Facebook.
Yes.
Where a Wayne Kelly is asking if there's a plan to process and develop products and sub-products under the Jamaican brand.
All right, so we're gonna take that one. Miss Edwards? Jampro? Yeah, who's gonna take that question?
Me.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to comment on that question. The question of branding, I don't necessarily think that it really would be useful to have the brand of Jamaica. What would be useful is to have an authenticity stamp. So I think the whole question of branding and brand Jamaica, a lot of people talk about it, but if you have a brand, and I spent 10 years working with Appleton and Ray and Neville brand building in London. The whole point about a brand is you have to control it, you have to have quality, you have to have a consumer promise behind it. So the efforts to establish, by Jamaican and various brands of this nature, various stamps of approval and authenticity have not worked because the bigger producers and exporters haven't bought into it. And one of the reasons is that any such seal of approval or authenticity must have a quality control mechanism behind it and must have a marketing program to establish it. The point that Megan Scott raised about the lack of promotion of Jamaican products at retail level in the international market, I think is critical, because many people think it's okay to just export, i.e. send a box and that's it. But actually they don't understand how retail works in the metropolitan market. Retail is an opportunity to connect with consumers. And if you don't find a way to explain to consumers how to consume your product and why your product is better than the other product, you're not going to make the sale. And this is really a fundamental, when I talked about training of people, I'm really not, and training of farmers, I'm not saying that they don't understand how to grow. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that people don't understand what it is to market a product in a metropolitan market. And that's the kind of training that we need to impart. So I think, yes, more retail marketing is definitely necessary, but that requires scale. So it's not every small farmer that is going to export, and it's not every small farmer that's going to be able to finance the kind of marketing that is necessary. You need people to come together to form larger scale operations that can then finance something like that kind of marketing. And the question of branding, as I said, the branding, a lot of people want to own a brand, but one of the best opportunities I think that I have seen, or one of the best projects that I have seen, actually brought 4, it was meant to be 7 producers together to form one brand and to market all their products under that one brand. And that is a real, because that's the way that these smaller producers can achieve scale. And that is a program that is really poised for success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for that real good update on branding and marketing. Next, we're gonna have a question from Mr. Victor Cummins. Victor, you unmute, Victor. Mr. Cummins, yes, let's have Mr. Victor Cummins. Mr. Cummins is the manager, project manager of one of the new high-tech farm being established in Portmore. That's so?
Yeah, being established.
All right.
Three things I wanted to raise issue, and was typing the first issue with regards to our small farmers. I believe that we need to pay more attention to training and working with our small farmers. You know, Patrick, how I've complained where we have tried and submitted to get funding to assist and train our small farmers, and we keep on getting turned down. Their focus is more on the big guys. Nobody wants to pay attention to our small farmers. The small farmers are the backbone to agriculture, and we need to pay more attention and develop a training program. The last two things, some issues that I've been very concerned about, predial larceny. We know that that's a big problem. We mention it, but there's a strategy. Nobody's really doing much. I don't agree with a thing that somebody shared with me when we were in the Dom Rep, and we asked them why they don't have a problem of predial larceny. Their response was, we shot them. They shot him once and everybody stopped. I don't agree with all of that, but we need to see what we can do, and we need to have a concerted effort to predial larceny. One thing that we were doing years ago downtown, get the thieves involved. If you give, idle hands are the devil's playthings, and that comes into the issue of youth in agriculture. There's so many young people just sitting around on the corner digging out their hand middle. I know people don't want to talk about going back to the 70s or whatever, but I believe that we should pick them up and put them to work on some of that idle land. And when they grow, they get a percentage of what they grow for themselves. The rest we market. So let's put those idle hands to work. There are too many young people. Yes, COVID is here, but it presents an opportunity for us. There's an opportunity. And I just hope that we're not going to continue. What we've been doing is chat, and chat too damn much. Let us develop a plan. Let us develop an implementation, and let us move forward to implement. With regard to the hotels, we know the problems. Now they shut down, and once we open back up, whenever that is, they're gonna start importing. Now, I'm not saying close our borders, but we need to ensure that those hotels buy from our farmers, have the farmers growing for them, and then they need to pay. They pay the big man within a week or 2 weeks, but they're gonna stretch out to pay the little farmer for 30 to 60 days. That's not fair. So we're gonna put in strategies, we're gonna talk about things, and then they're gonna fund certain things, and then we're gonna back off. Let us develop a plan, and let us implement it and stick to it. That's all I have to say.
Well said, Victor. I think the mindset is really coming to the forefront, and I'm picking up that everybody is really poised now to see to it that we turn agriculture around. Any comment from added comment from any other presenters? Mr. Fulton, want to make a comment? Oh, let's 1 minute. Mr. Fulton, just start over, please.
In terms of training, we depend too much on the production incentive program from government. No progressive country depend on government alone to put money into small farmer training. I have already said that we have destroyed the structure. You used to have targeted group. The cocoa group would have their branches in all the districts that cocoa grow, and you could put a group together within a jiffy. We have destroyed those. And so what we have got is some unspecific groups, just a group of people, and we don't have the benefit of putting them together in a very quick way. In terms of that training, I have been singing a song without success that we need an agricultural fund. Everywhere you go, you take the money that you build up and you have fund from Supreme Venture doing a good job to support healthcare and sports. You have fund from tourism to support tourism linkage. You have all kinds of funds. And agriculture, which is here. And if you talk about Supreme Venture, nobody buy lotto and cash pot more than rural farmers. Why is there the resistance to to set up an agricultural fund that would be the base for agricultural insurance, be the base for training. Instead, we use those cess money to build more bureaucracies. Every time you talk about agricultural cess, you can know that a new company will be formed to hire people to drive Prado and all kind of fancy vehicle and forget the farmers that pay the cess. This is where we need to go. We need to reprogram our money so that it goes back to the farmers in the rural districts. That is the group that kept Jamaica going for 300 years, and we have not spent enough on them.
Thank you, sir. The minister was laughing or smiling, so you get some support right there, right? You want to say something, Minister?
Yes, actually, I just wanted to point out that I agree with a lot of what Mr. Fulton has to say, but the government actually recognizes this as well. And this is why over the past several years, we have started to appropriate more funds for productivity incentives, for farm road improvements. We have had record amounts of money that have been allocated to the development of the repair of farm roads. It has had to be cut because of the COVID crisis in this most recent budget. But over the previous 2 years, we have had record amount of money for farm road improvement. But I also want to say, though, that because of the COVID situation, just yesterday in Parliament, the Minister of Finance tabled an early supplementary budget, in which we have added $1 billion to the productivity incentive scheme to assist our small farmers. So all is not lost, right? One of the things we did during the, and we're continuing to do it now, having the farmers markets all across the country. We purchased the produce from our small farmers at market prices. And we have been, in fact, selling the produce in community markets across the country at maybe a little bit less. So in other words, it's subsidized. But it is to get it off of the hands of the small farmers and get it into the marketplace. So there's no question that we have to do much more. And this is why, this is the context within which I mentioned the issues such as technology, the irrigation systems that I mentioned earlier. These are all, and of course, where, you know, someone mentioned, maybe in an ironic sort of way, the idea of one entity having 3,000 acres of land. Well, you know, when the sugar industry was in full flight, one entity would have 50, 60,000 acres of land. The difference here is that you have in this model coming up 3,000 acres, 10,000 acres. There's a working relationship between a mother farm and small farmers. And that is, we mustn't forget that. That's going to be happening at Innswood, happening at Bernard Lodge, and it's going to be happening all across the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Omar Thomas, I see
Yes.
where you indicate.
Yeah, yes, I just want to comment on what Victor said about predial larceny. And Fulton mentioned the Agricultural Development Fund. But what I would like to advise on this matter is that for the very first time in our agricultural history, we have had a concerted effort to deal with predial larceny.
Yes.
Predial larceny at this time has never had the type of leadership, the control of predial larceny, never had the type of leadership that it now has. Assistant Commissioner Gary Welsh has been put to supervise, oversee the entire management of the anti-predial larceny program nationally. And now, well, I will leave some part of what I'm going to say for the minister to talk about at the right time. But suffice it to say that they have been reaping successes. Programs are in place to educate farmers, educate extension officers, educate all the kind of persons who are involved in the production, agricultural production, so as to reduce the incidents. As a matter of fact, the reports coming out of the police in the last couple of months show that the reduction is significant.
Yes.
Okay, the next thing is Agricultural Development Fund. There is nobody in either of the two parties running the government of Jamaica who is opposed to it. It is just a matter of fine-tuning the details of how the thing will operate. So Victor, be assured, of Fulton, be assured that the Agricultural Production Fund, which the JAS spearheaded about 15 years ago, is back on the front burner. And it requires some greater consultation to be done before we can start looking at it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks very much. Now, Mr. Quest, see you indicating.
Me, please.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I've been looking in the chat room, and I've been, while I'm not responding, I'm seeing some comments. And there has been a suggestion that what has been discussed here should form the basis of a plan that perhaps could be presented. We know, of course, and Minister has alluded to the plans of the government. But what I think is important here is that we have many prominent representatives of the private sector, and I must acknowledge Victor. Victor has done very significant work in agriculture over the past many years, from when he was, many persons don't know that he was a minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, so he knows the business and he has supported it. But I think Patrick, and again, I must commend you, Patrick, for your vision and for your foresight, because it is only Patrick who could have put together such an august body of presenters. And if we are watching the participants, there are many prominent persons who have not presented but are among the participants. If we are watching the comments, it gives us an idea of the level of discussion which has been generated here. Patrick, I believe this should not go to waste. And the matter of an action plan, Patrick, I think it is something that you should take and you should run with it, because this could make a significant, this could be the turning point for the development of agriculture in Jamaica. And those of us who are here now, we will look back at this with nostalgia. We'll be nostalgic about it, that this was a turning point for agriculture and we were a part of it. So Patrick, over to you. Let us try and run with this.
Well, you know, Mr. Quest, I must tell you that this idea, though it came from me, but it was gel and put together and in consultation with the permanent secretary, Mr. Dermot Spence. So
yes,
we are in consultation, and he's always open for discussion.
Yes.
So this was really a collaborative discussion. As a matter of fact, most of the presenters here too, and
yes,
the staff in the ministry also assisted to put the package together. All right, thank you. So we have Miss Dunkley, Dr. Karen Dunkley, wants to ask a question too. By the way, Dr. Dunkley is the diaspora representative for the Northeast region. And so she has and she's also a farmer in her own rights. So Dr. Dunkley, let's hear it.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'm going to say my mom is a farmer.
Oh, not you?
In her own right. I try. I'm an add-on. Thank you. And certainly I come from a family of farmers. As you know, my grandparents were farmers, and certainly my mom and her family. Thank you, Patrick. This is, everyone has noted, a really thought-provoking forum. And thank you so much, Mr. Quest. I think he presented what we're seeing in the chat is around the action steps to have a strategic, coordinated response to agriculture and food production in Jamaica. My piece that was not necessarily included in this conversation, but I think it's important, is to think about the pipeline to agriculture and farming. So the pipeline by which, when we think of the K-12 pipeline, we oftentimes do not promote farming and agriculture as a viable industry and career path for young people. It is viewed as an afterthought, or if you're not bright or smart enough, then you become a farmer. And I'm just saying that it's time that we rethink that narrative, that we begin a new narrative, because we know and recognize that growing our own food and being aware of both the science of it as well as the art of it is critical to our national development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dunkley. All right, so there's another person here with a comment.
There's a Deroy Williams that wanted to ask a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams.
Hi, everyone. I don't, first of all, thank you. And the Venerable Neville Quest have said it really well. And you may not recognize me, Neville, but I know who you are. I am a member of the diaspora, and I live here in New Jersey. And the first thing I want to bring up is, for Jamaica, I think one of our biggest problems with agriculture is energy costs, not just in agriculture, but in production. And my background in Jamaica was in manufacturing before I migrated to the United States. And maybe it is due time that we look at incentives for farmers to whether they have some form of renewable energy on their farms that are incentivized by the government of Jamaica, whether it be solar or wind, that are unique to, that are connected just to the farms. Another thing that we could incorporate in what we do in Jamaica, Mr. Quest mentioned funding. Funding has always been a problem, both for farmers and for manufacturers, when I was a manufacturer myself there. And crowdfunding is a huge thing here in the United States. And Dr. Dunkley, who just presented, I'm sure she knows very well, we have so many platforms that you can go on to find funding if you are a startup here in the United States. Some are successful, some are not so successful. And I really believe that there are enough people in Jamaica and in the diaspora, including myself, who will be willing to participate in such funding to grow agriculture and to grow manufacturing in our homeland. A few other things I wanted to mention was the concept of equipment sharing. A lot of our small farmers cannot afford a tractor or a rototiller or just basic equipment. And if you, from the whole concept of a mother farm is great, but if a company, for example, has equipment such as tractors and tillers and that kind of stuff, that they can loan to farmers, or they can go to the farms and produce service of tilling the soil and fertilizing, planting the seedlings and that kind of stuff for a guy who has a 3 or 4 acre farm and not necessarily a guy who has 20 acres. I don't see any harm there. I think it'd be a great thing. And the last thing I wanted to mention, a lot of talk about the pre-larceny and that kind of stuff. Technology can now be utilized in a great way to fight pre-larceny, such as, and maybe you're doing it and I don't. I've not been in Jamaica in a year and a half, but the employment of drone technology and CCTV to fight pre-larceny. Here in the United States, if you come to a farm that, certain farms in the rural areas of New Jersey where I live, people know from the mere fact that there's a camera there or a sign that says you're being recorded, you think twice. So those are just some of the comments I wanted to share with you folks today. Thank you.
So Maitland, repeat, they weren't hearing you.
Oh, sorry, Norma Jarrett. Is Miss Jarrett there still? All right.
There was another question from a Charles Ramdat.
Charles Ramdat.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for doing this. I'm a son of Jamaica's agriculture. I've lived in Orlando for 41 years, but I'm in Jamaica as often as 1 week a month. And there are a lot of people here who are very interested and have been for a long time in helping farming. So I question about the predial larceny thing. I think we need to play that up and let people know constantly what gains are being made, because I know many, many people from here are willing to adopt small farm adventures in their various districts, but they're not willing to do it, not knowing that predial larceny is being tackled successfully. So you need to play that up. The next thing I want to say quickly is, it's been great, very broad discussion. My late father would have loved it, but I think we need to pick 2 or 3 areas of focus for the short term and really tackle them very hard, okay? One of the things I'm a little bit partial, I'm from Trelawney, all right? I'm a little bit partial about tubers and not taking advantage of the opportunities with tubers. I would like to see a partnership with an entity like Grace to do better processing of tubers, because, you know, I live in Orlando and I'm not getting the freshest of yams. I buy the yams every week, but I am convinced if they're pre-processed in a nice way, we could get them, get them to a point where they're more enjoyable here. What I also do just about every month, I package Jamaican produce like tubers and I send them to other places in the US. And that's why I mentioned Grace, because if someone like Grace that has a great brand and it's all over the US, not just in the big cities, but it's all over US in supermarkets, someone like Grace could partner with farmers in Jamaica to better process, pre-process tubers, and then distribute them across the US and Canada. Then you would start making some real money for the developers of tuber farms in Jamaica. Small, very small and micro farms. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Francis, you have a question from Facebook?
Right, okay, so this question is from Mr. Dennis Boudou, who is the president of the Jamaica Cocoa Sector Development Alliance. He's asking what is happening about the cocoa and coffee sectors. These 2 industries have great potential and have been forgotten. He would like to know what is the government's plan, if any, are in the pipeline for these industries.
Who would like to take on that question? Mr. Fulton?
Yes,
ahead,
Dennis Boudou himself is a member of the Jamaica Cultural Society, and he and I worked on a nursery development plan, which is with the ministry, to produce up to 100,000 cocoa seedling over a period of 5 years, and to target a property that we have in Highgate, the Mount Rose property, to bring back that first property, and to undertake a series of replanting, because our cocoa trees are between 40 and 60 up to 70-year-old and have passed their best. So you'll never get the yield for it to be productive and efficient. So there's still a big market for our fine flavor cocoa, which is used to blend other cocoa from Central America and all over to make good chocolate. And so there's a big business, plus there's an upstream business there where we can start our own fermenting and do our own chocolate. But we need to replant the fields, and there need to be a strong program to do so. With respect to coffee, I am puzzled. Why is there the demise of the lowland coffee that yield 3 times as much, 4 times as much as the Blue Mountain coffee, and to use that as the mix and keep the money here instead of importing more than £1 million of cheap, worthless coffee from Central America to blend with the Blue Mountain. It's something that the government need to get in the middle and do something about, because we as private people do not have the lever to pull to change that. But you would expand rural employment by hundreds of people and give a lifeline to many rural communities that are decaying.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fulton. Miss Jarrett, Norma, you
Yes, Patrick.
wanted to ask a question now?
Sure.
Right.
Patrick, first of all, let me say this is an excellent forum. I'm glad you have given us the opportunity to meet and to have this forum. My primary focus is, as Oliver has already underscored, is the fact that we have so much expertise in Jamaica and there is so much lip service. So my thing is that we need to have a call to action. And my call to action starts with education. We need to invest more in tertiary education, agriculture education, and even teach agriculture in the high schools. Here in the United States, you know, most people have extension programs that teaches in the schools. And so we need to adopt that principle so that we can make farming a more lucrative and well-respected industry, you know. The next thing I want to say is that we need to invest in new techniques, hydroponic farming, you know, plant tissue culture. We need to use more wind turbines and other mechanisms that can help us to generate more revenue while we're farming. We need to, the government might want to think about renting farm equipment to farmers, you know, because as somebody has already said, you know, most farmers can't afford big equipment, tractors and such. So if we can have a program where we can loan or rent farm equipment to farmers, I think that would go a long way. And the next thing is we need to treat it as a business, have a business plan and capitalize on all the opportunities that there is out there, because certainly there are a lot of opportunities out there and we need to stop importing so much food to Jamaica. And the only way we're going to do it is if we start with an action plan. Thank you, Patrick.
Well said, Norma. I must tell you people that Norma is the president of the OFANA, that's the Old Farmers Association of North America. This is a group of agriculturalists who previously attended the Jamaica School of Agriculture and the College of Agriculture. So although she's overseas, she continued to support Jamaican agriculture. In fact, there's a project right now at the College of Agriculture, the establishment of a tissue culture lab, which is vital in plant propagation. So kudos to you, Norma.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, next question, please.
We have a lot of hardworking people with us in OFANA.
I know. All right, next question. All right, so are we coming to an end of our discussion program? Is there any other question or comment before we go?
I think there's a last question from Facebook. And this person is asking, what is the government's plan to engage more young persons in the farming community?
Can I ask now? The minister seemed to take a rest. Anybody here can answer that question for us? Mr. Fulton, you previously worked as RADA Executive Director, Jamaica 4-H Club Executive Director, now the JAS. What plans are there for young people? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think there are a number of olive branches that were stretched out, but because they perceive agriculture as not so much a sexy thing to do, we need to advertise. We need to put the glory of agriculture on television and in the newspaper and on the radio, that it is not mere going to a farm with a hoe and a pickaxe and things like that. And the wealthiest people in the world are in agriculture, because even when you fail, you have the land left to start again. So we need to sell a message to them that it is much better than some of what they come out of agricultural college to do. Some of them come out of agricultural college, they're driving bus and taxis and trucks, Not saying that those are not good pathway, but they would have wasted money that government would have spent to run these colleges. So I think we need to attract them, to show them some success story, to show them what agriculture can do, to run a video up at Macney and Douglas Castle and in Wirefence, Trelawney, and in Guys Hill, to show the type of houses that farmers have built and the type of vehicle that they drive that they have earned out of their farms. We need to attract them in another way than to have them with this gloomy picture that it is just work, 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 and no success. I think that is needed for young people. So let us see if we can put a program together.
Okay. Chairman, if I could intervene there, I agree with Lenworth. We have to change the image of agriculture, because agriculture as it is practiced in Jamaica tends to be, what people know about it tends to be really old information. They don't understand what modern agriculture is about. The way to get young people into agriculture is through technology. That's what will change the picture for them. So CASES is College of Agriculture, Science and Education is one of the critical areas that is doing something about this. In addition, you have some schools and some heart academies that are trying to train young people in modern agriculture. I know for a fact that the farm in Innswood, Mr. Leachin's farm, has sent, I think it is going to be 60 young people to Israel to get trained over a year in modern agricultural practices. And these are the kinds of initiatives that will change the picture. Over 5 years, he's going to be training some 300 young people to come back and be farmers and to be entrepreneurs. And it is through that kind of cross-fertilization and looking at different agricultural models that we will start to change this picture. JAMPRO definitely has had already several webinars, not in the COVID period, but webinars, physical, face-to-face, both in Kingston and Montego Bay on agribusiness. And we intend to do more of that because we think that it is through imparting information about what modern agriculture looks like that we can start to change the picture. We are also advocating for changes in some of the policies because we think there needs to be incentives for R&D, understanding of the productive input relief, which allows you to bring in duty-free equipment, but does not allow you to bring in services to agriculture and equipment and technology, which will change the agricultural picture. These are the things that we need to do to change the picture in the short term. So we're in the process of implementing, or at least advocating to government. We have a number of projects like that to change the policies that underpin agriculture, because many of those policies are out of date. So a lot of the things that people have talked about this evening, both on the chat and live, are really, really important issues. It's going to take time to respond to all those issues, but a lot of them are actually in the plans that, as I said, we have developed. So I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I think we just can't give up. We have to keep on plugging at it. And as I think it was Novell said, and Victor Cummings, that we really need to just start to implement, and implementation is the critical issue, because the talk, as they say, has gone on for a long time. So, but thank you very much, Patrick, for organizing this forum. I think it has been a really rich exchange of views.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
And Patrick, just one quick thing. We must not forget the Jamaica 4-H clubs that has a good program in youth in agriculture, and they have been extending their reach and have been doing a very good job in school gardening and so on. So that institution is still there.
Thank you very much. Dr. Emil, you indicate you want to say something? Dr. Emil?
Yes. Just to put things a little more in its proper context, based on what the other people have just said, Farmers are not to be kept in isolation as an entity on their own. We need a new concept of agriculture association, which is a vertically integrated association that incorporates farmers in to mix with all levels of the value chain in the same room, talking about the same business. In terms of people in agriculture, just like the new agriculture requires highly trained people who will also earn an awful lot of money. You start at the base with research and development. These will require a wide range of scientists and technologists, horticulturists, agronomists, livestock specialists, veterinarians, and so on. From there, we go to the multiplication units that will require biotechnology and so on to convert the factors researched into usable entities for farmers. From there, we'll go into agricultural extension, which is a specialist professional group in agriculture who will train the farmers themselves. And the farmers themselves will have to be enlightened with knowledge, skills, and an understanding of how to utilize capital. Beyond that, the farming group goes on to the processing facilities where we convert what the farmers grow, which currently are raw materials really, into further processed goods and into convenience formats that can not only be utilized locally, but can travel internationally. Once we go internationally, they will have to be branded. And this branding requires agriculturists who with legal skills. In fact, the lawyers now relate to agriculture because to protect intellectual property rights and branding, there have to be lawyers relating to agriculture to do this. Then from here, we go into marketing. Marketing in international areas will require people with a knowledge of those international areas. And so there will be people who will need to study international affairs, how other governments and peoples operate and function. And then we have to go into people with business acumen to establish partnerships with those people across the world so that our products can get there. So this old-fashioned idea that a farmer and agriculture is somebody with a pitchfork and a cutlass has long gone. It requires the whole spectrum of trained persons who each will learn as much as any other trained person, whether they be doctor, lawyer, architect, or engineer. So agriculture is essential. It will require all these elements, and so that it's not something that one needs to look down to. In fact, you will look up to it. That's how we will feed ourselves and survive.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emil. We have really come to the end of what, so far has been a very, very informative event. This has really been a production of the Agriculturalist newspaper, the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, and the Jamaica Cultural Society. I must say thanks to Permanent Secretary Spence. When the idea came about, he was all for it, and he has really guided us to put this event on. I must say special thanks to other staff in the ministry like Tamika Gordon, Chad Bryan, and the staff of GIS and the PBCJ, Andre Allen, Rupert Peter from GIS, Carl Francis, Odlo Fiddler. Ladies and gentlemen, this was really a big team. I can tell you, I have about 10 people behind me right now, right? So while I'm the face, it was really a team effort. And I want to thank everybody. I want to also special thank the presenters. Their presentations were so well researched, right? If it was another settings, I would ask for a little clap, but the presenters have really done a fantastic job in presenting this information to us. And we plan it's recorded, and the ministry, along with the JAS, will be looking at how to implement most of these ideas. So it won't be just a talk shop. And so I'm really privileged to serve in this capacity today, to put on this event and to get the support of so many people. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to another town hall meeting. Take care. Be safe.